I stepped through the courtroom doors and heard my daughter Sarah's cruel laughter echo off the walls. My son-in-law Derek quickly turned his face away, unable to meet my eyes. They thought they'd won everything. The judge suddenly froze mid-sentence, his gavel trembling in his hand as recognition dawned on his face. "My God," he whispered, color draining from his cheeks. "Is that really him?" Every head in that packed courtroom swiveled toward me. None of them had any idea who I really was until that moment. 3 years before that courtroom confrontation, life had painted a very different picture. I was Landon, a 62-year-old retired postal worker, living in a modest 2-story house in suburban Denver, with my wife Margaret. The house wasn't much to look at from the outside, just another beige structure with white trim among hundreds of similar homes. But Margaret had transformed it into a warm sanctuary, filled with family photos and her collection of ceramic birds. Sarah was our only child, born after 7 years of trying and 2 miscarriages that nearly broke Margaret's spirit. Perhaps that's why we spoiled her. Every school play, we sat in the front row. Every soccer game, we cheered the loudest. When she wanted to quit pre-med after 2 years to study art history instead, we supported her decision, even though it meant those expensive science textbooks became very costly doorstops. I remembered the day she brought Derek home for the first time. It was a Thursday evening in September, and Margaret had made her famous pot roast. Derek walked in, wearing a perfectly pressed suit, his shoes so shiny I could see my reflection. He had that kind of smile that seemed to light up our dining room, and he complimented Margaret's cooking with just the right amount of enthusiasm. "Mr. and Mrs. Landon," he'd said, standing to shake my hand with a firm grip. "Sarah's told me so much about you both. She says you're the reason she believes in true love." Margaret had blushed at that, and I'd felt my chest swell with pride. Here was a successful young lawyer, clearly accomplished and well-mannered, interested in our Sarah. He worked at Preston and Associates, a firm downtown that handled corporate law. The boy even helped clear the table without being asked. Over the following months, Derek became a fixture in our home. Sunday dinners, holiday celebrations, birthday parties. He never missed one. He'd sit with me during football games, asking questions about the postal service that seemed genuinely interested, rather than polite. He'd help Margaret in the garden, his expensive clothes getting dirty as he planted tulip bulbs for spring. "I think he's the one," Sarah had whispered to us after Derek left one evening. Her eyes sparkled with a happiness I hadn't seen since she was a little girl, opening Christmas presents. The proposal came exactly 1 year after they met. Derek had asked my permission first, showing up at my door on a Saturday morning with coffee and donuts from our favorite shop. We sat on the back porch as he nervously explained his 5-year plan, his savings account balance, and his intentions towards Sarah. "I want to give her the world, Mr. Landon," he'd said, his usual confidence wavering just enough to seem sincere. "But first, I want to give her the wedding she's dreamed about since she was young." I appreciated that he asked, even though we both knew it was just a formality. Sarah was 28, independent, living in her own apartment downtown. But the gesture mattered. It showed respect. The wedding planning consumed our lives for the next 8 months. Sarah wanted everything perfect. The historic venue, the imported flowers, the 7-piece band, the custom dress that cost more than my first car. Derek insisted on paying half, but I could see the strain in his eyes when the bills arrived. "Let us cover it," I told him one evening when Sarah was out with her bridesmaids. "We've been saving for this day since she was born." That was mostly true. We had saved, though not nearly enough for the extravaganza Sarah envisioned. I dipped into my retirement fund, reasoning that seeing my only daughter marry the man she loved was worth more than a few extra vacation trips in my golden years. Margaret agreed, though I caught her studying our bank statements late at night when she thought I was asleep. The wedding day arrived with Colorado's perfect June weather. Sarah floated down the aisle like an angel in white silk, and lace her smile radiant enough to power the entire city. Derek waited at the altar, tears streaming down his face. Even I got misty-eyed when they exchanged vows they'd written themselves. "You've given me everything," Derek said to Sarah, his voice strong despite the emotion. "Your love, your trust, your family. I promise to spend every day earning those gifts." The reception was magical. Margaret and I danced to our wedding song, while Sarah and Derek swayed nearby. The champagne flowed, the band played, and for one perfect evening, our family felt complete. I gave a toast about love, lasting through seasons of change, about how proud Margaret and I were, about welcoming Derek as the son we'd never had. 2 months after the wedding, everything shifted. Margaret woke up one morning with a pain in her side that wouldn't go away. The doctor visit started, then the tests, then the devastating diagnosis. Pancreatic cancer already spread to her liver. 6 months to a year, if we were lucky. Our perfect world crumbled. I took early retirement to become Margaret's full-time caregiver. The medical bills piled up faster than autumn leaves. Insurance covered some, but the experimental treatments Margaret wanted to try were deemed not medically necessary. Sarah visited daily, bringing groceries, and sitting with her mother while I grabbed a few hours of sleep. Derek appeared one evening with a briefcase and a concerned expression. "Landon, Sarah's told me about the bills. I want to help." I started to protest, but he raised a hand. "Please, your family now. Let me at least help manage the financial side. I deal with medical billing issues for some of my corporate clients. I might be able to negotiate better rates, set up payment plans, maybe even find programs you qualify for." His offer seemed like a lifeline. I was drowning in paperwork. I didn't understand spending hours on hold with insurance companies when I should have been with Margaret. Derek produced power of attorney documents explaining they would let him handle the billing departments on our behalf. "It's temporary," he assured me, his pen hovering over the signature line. "Just until things get more manageable." I signed without reading the fine print. What kind of father doesn't trust his son-in-law? Margaret was getting worse, requiring round-the-clock care. Sarah often stayed overnight, and Derek would arrive early with coffee and pastries, always checking on how we were managing. The final months blurred together in a haze of medication schedules and doctor appointments. Margaret fought hard, but cancer is a cruel adversary. Near the end, when the morphine doses were high, she would sometimes grab my hand with surprising strength. "Don't trust them, Landon," she whispered one night, her eyes wide and unfocused. "I heard them talking. They're planning something." I smoothed her hair back, kissing her forehead. "Shh, love. It's just the medication talking. Sarah and Derek are here to help." She died on a Tuesday morning in November, just as the first snow began to fall. Sarah was there, holding her mother's other hand, sobbing into Derek's shoulder. The funeral was beautiful, the church packed with friends and neighbors. Derek gave a eulogy about the mother-in-law who'd welcomed him without reservation, who'd taught him the secret to her pot roast recipe, who'd shown him what unconditional love looked like. That night, after everyone had gone home, and the casserole dishes had been stacked in the refrigerator, I sat alone in our bedroom. Margaret's last words echoed in my mind, but I pushed the thought away. She'd been so confused those final weeks, calling me by her father's name, seeing people who weren't there. The cancer had spread to her brain, the doctors explained. Hallucinations were common. But now, 3 years later, standing in that courtroom, watching my daughter laugh at my apparent humiliation, I understood that Margaret had tried to warn me. Even through the fog of pain and medication, she'd seen what I'd been too trusting to notice. My beloved wife had spent her last conscious moments trying to protect me from the two people we'd loved most. The judge banged his gavel, trying to restore order to the chaos my entrance had created. Sarah's laughter cut off abruptly as she noticed the federal badges entering behind me. Derek's face had gone from embarrassed to terrified in the span of seconds. And Judge Thompson, the man who was supposed to rule on my competency that day, looked like he'd seen a ghost from his past. Because he had. He just didn't know yet how much that ghost had learned about his present. 6 months after Margaret's funeral, the house felt like a museum dedicated to a life that no longer existed. Her ceramic birds sat on their shelves collecting dust I couldn't bring myself to wipe away. Her coffee mug still waited by the machine, as if she might walk in any moment and brew her morning cup with 2 sugars and just a splash of cream. Sarah appeared at my door on a rainy Thursday morning in May, Derek behind her carrying boxes. "Dad, we've talked about this," she said, using that gentle voice people reserve for children and the elderly. "You can't keep living here alone. It's too much house for one person." Before I could properly object, they were inside filling my quiet spaces with their energy and purpose. Derek set the boxes in the living room, while Sarah walked through the house, her face a mask of concern that didn't quite reach her eyes. "When's the last time you cleaned the bathroom?" she called from down the hall. "And there's expired milk in the fridge. Dad, this isn't like you." She was right, of course. I'd let things slide. Without Margaret, the daily routines that kept a house running seemed pointless. Why make the bed when I was the only one who'd see it? Why cook a proper meal when a sandwich eaten over the sink served the same purpose? "We're moving in," Derek announced, as if it had already been decided. "Just temporarily, until you're back on your feet. Sarah can work from home and I can commute to the office. It's the perfect solution." I wanted to refuse. The thought of anyone else in Margaret's kitchen, using her things, sitting in her chair, made my chest tight. But the exhaustion was bone deep, and the argument died on my lips. Maybe having them around would help fill the silence that pressed against my eardrums every night. They transformed my life with swift efficiency. Sarah took over the cooking and cleaning while Derek set up a home office in the spare bedroom. Suddenly, there were schedules and mealtimes and conversations over dinner that felt almost normal. Almost. The first strange document arrived 3 weeks later. Derek presented it at breakfast, sliding the papers across the table between my oatmeal and orange juice. "Just some tax stuff, Landon. Nothing to worry about. The government's been sending refund checks to the wrong account. This will correct it." I reached for my reading glasses, but Sarah plucked them from my hand. "Oh, Dad, you know how these forms give you headaches. Derek's already reviewed everything. Just sign here and here." The pages were dense with legal terminology that swam before my tired eyes. I trusted Derek. He was a lawyer, after all. My signature looked shaky on the lines, and Sarah patted my hand reassuringly. "See, easy. Derek's taking care of everything." More documents followed over the weeks. Insurance forms, bank paperwork, something about property taxes. Each time Derek explained their necessity with patient professionalism, while Sarah hovered nearby ready to whisk away my reading glasses or distract me with questions about Margaret's recipe box. My pension checks, always reliable as sunrise on the 1st of each month, began arriving late. Then, not at all. When I called the pension office, a harried clerk informed me the direct deposit information had been changed. But I didn't change anything. I protested, gripping the phone with confusion. "Says here you submitted the forms yourself, Mr. Landon. Signed and dated. Would you like me to mail you copies?" Sarah appeared at my elbow before I could respond, gently taking the phone. "I'll handle this, Dad. You're getting yourself worked up over nothing. Probably just a computer glitch." The checks resumed eventually, though I never saw them. Derek explained he'd set up automatic transfers to cover household expenses. "Easier this way," he said with that winning smile. "You don't have to worry about remembering to pay bills." Small things began to disappear. Not all at once. Margaret's jewelry box migrated from our dresser to Sarah's room for safekeeping. The silver set we'd received as a wedding gift vanished from the dining room cabinet, Derek explaining he'd put it in a safety deposit box, given the rise in neighborhood break-ins. "What break-ins?" I asked, but Sarah was already changing the subject, wondering aloud if I'd remembered to take my medications. The medications. That was another change. Sarah insisted on managing my pills, filling a weekly organizer with vitamins and supplements to keep me healthy. The bottles lived in her bathroom now, away from my prying eyes. New prescriptions appeared regularly, Derek's doctor friend stopping by for social visits that always ended with a new recommendation. Dr. Marcus Hoffman was a thin man with nervous hands and a laugh that never quite synced with his jokes. He'd appear for dinner, make small talk about golf and the weather, then casually suggest I seemed tired stressed, perhaps in need of something to help me sleep better. Think clearer. Manage the grief that was clearly overwhelming me. Perfectly normal after loss, he'd say, scribbling on his prescription pad. These will help smooth out the rough edges. The pills made me foggy. Mornings became harder, thoughts slower to form. Sarah would find me staring at nothing, lost in confusion about what I'd meant to do. Her concern seemed genuine as she guided me back to my chair, tucking a blanket around my legs, like I was an invalid. Maybe we should consider some help, she suggested one afternoon, finding me in the garage with no memory of why I'd gone there. There are wonderful facilities now, Dad. Not nursing homes, more like retirement communities. People to talk to, activities, medical staff on hand. The friends who'd checked on me after Margaret's death stopped coming around. When I mentioned it to Sarah, she sighed sadly. I've been telling them you need rest. Some of them were visiting too often, tiring you out. Mrs. Patterson was practically living here, bringing casseroles every day. I had to ask her to give you some space. But I missed Mrs. Patterson's casseroles. I missed Tom from down the street, who'd drag me out for walks. I missed the book club members who'd invited me to join after Margaret died, insisting I needed the social connection. Now, my world had shrunk to just Sarah Derrick and the occasional appearance by Dr. Hoffman. The day I discovered my bank accounts had been emptied, I was trying to buy groceries. Sarah had sent me to the store alone for once, a short list in my shaking hand. Milk, bread, eggs, simple things. But when I tried to pay, my debit card was declined. Must be a mistake. I mumbled to the teenage cashier, fumbling for my credit card. Also declined. I abandoned the groceries and drove straight to the bank, my hands trembling on the steering wheel. The teller pulled up my accounts with a few keystrokes, then frowned at her screen. Mr. Landon, these accounts were closed last month. The funds were transferred to the new joint account you set up with your daughter. What joint account? I never set up any joint account. The teller's frown deepened. She typed more, clicked through screens, then looked at me with something between pity and suspicion. Sir, you came in yourself. We have the security footage. You signed all the paperwork. Don't you remember? The drive home was a blur. I confronted Sarah in the kitchen where she was preparing dinner, as if the world hadn't just tilted off its axis. She listened to my frantic words with that patient expression I'd come to dread. Dad, of course you remember. We went together. You said you wanted me to help manage things, since you were having trouble keeping track. The banker Janet, she wore that bright purple dress you commented on. The details she provided were so specific, so convincing. Had I been there? The medications made everything fuzzy. Days blended together. Maybe I had signed papers. Maybe I had forgotten. The doubt crept in like fog, obscuring the sharp edges of my certainty. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, trying to grab hold of memories that slipped away like smoke. Margaret's voice drifted through my mind, urgent and afraid. Don't trust them, Landon. I heard them talking. But talking about what? And why would my own daughter, the baby I'd held in the delivery room, the girl I'd taught to ride a bike, the young woman I'd walked down the aisle, why would she want to hurt me? It didn't make sense. Nothing made sense anymore. The next morning, Sarah found me in Margaret's chair, still wearing yesterday's clothes. Her sigh was heavy with manufactured worry. Dad, you never came to bed. This isn't good. I think it's time we talked seriously about getting you somewhere with proper care. Derek stood behind her, his hand on her shoulder in a gesture of support. His expression was sympathetic, but something flickered in his eyes when he thought I wasn't looking. Satisfaction, anticipation. Or was that just another confused interpretation from my unreliable mind? I'm calling Dr. Hoffman, Sarah announced, already reaching for her phone. We need to discuss what's best for you. I wanted to protest, to fight, to demand answers. But the words wouldn't come properly, and the exhaustion was so complete that resistance felt impossible. Maybe they were right. Maybe I was losing myself in the grief and confusion. Maybe I needed help. But as Sarah spoke in hushed tones to the doctor, I caught a fragment of conversation not meant for my ears. Yes, doctor. He's deteriorating faster than expected. How soon can you file the paperwork? A cold clarity pierced through the medication fog. They weren't trying to help me. They were trying to erase me to make me disappear into some facility where my signatures would mean nothing and my voice would go unheard. The loving daughter and devoted son-in-law who'd moved in to care for me were slowly, methodically stealing everything Margaret and I had built. I closed my eyes and let them think I'd dozed off in the chair. Let them believe their plan was working. Because in that moment of horrible understanding, I made a decision. I would play the part they'd written for me, the confused old man sliding into senility. But behind the act, the real Landon would be watching, waiting, and planning. Margaret had tried to warn me. Now, finally, I was ready to listen. The art of pretending to sleep is something you perfect when you're sharing a house with people you no longer trust. The key is in the breathing. Slow, steady, with just the occasional soft snore. I'd mastered it over the weeks since my revelation, lying in Margaret's chair with my eyes closed, while Sarah and Derek moved around me like I was furniture. It was a Wednesday evening in August, when I heard the conversation that changed everything. Sarah was in the kitchen, making tea, the kettle's whistle covering my slight shift in position. Derek had just come home from work, his expensive shoes clicking on our hardwood floors. They thought I was deeply asleep, drugged by the evening medication Sarah had watched me swallow an hour earlier. What they didn't know was that I'd been tonguing the pills, hiding them under my tongue, until I could spit them out later. The mental fog had started clearing after just 3 days off the medication, though I was careful to maintain the confused, sluggish behavior they expected. How much longer? Sarah's voice carried clearly from the kitchen. No more false sweetness when she thought I couldn't hear. Dr. Hoffman says another month, maybe 2. Derek replied. I heard the refrigerator open a beer bottle hissing as he twisted off the cap. He needs more documented incidents before the competency hearing will be a slam dunk. A month. Sarah's laugh was nothing like the bright sound I remembered from her childhood. This was sharp, irritated. He's draining money just sitting there. Food utilities, those fake medications that aren't even working fast enough. Patience, babe. We've already moved everything that matters. The house is in the shell company's name, his pension's being redirected, the life insurance beneficiaries have been changed. Once he's declared incompetent, we can ship him off to that place in Aurora. Medicare will cover most of it, and we can sell this dump. My hands gripped the chair arms, but I forced them to relax. Any tension, any sign I was awake could destroy everything. This dump was my childhood home, Sarah said, but there was no sentiment in it, just stating a fact. And now it's our retirement fund. Between this place and what we've already moved offshore, we're set. Plus, I've got Peterson lined up as the next mark. His kids live in Europe, never visit. He's worth 3 times what your dad had. Had. Past tense. Like I was already gone. Sarah moved into the living room, and I felt her presence near my chair. My breathing remained steady, even as my pulse raced. She studied me for a long moment, then reached down and took my wrist, checking my pulse like a nurse. His heart rate's too high for someone sleeping, she murmured. Every muscle in my body wanted to tense. Had I given myself away? So old people have irregular heartbeats. Dr. Hoffman said so. Derek joined her, and I smelled his cologne, something expensive and sharp. Besides, even if he heard something, who'd believe him? Confused old man with dementia, making wild accusations against his loving family. Sarah released my wrist. You're right. I'm just ready for this to be over. Playing the devoted daughter is exhausting. Think of it as a performance, Derek suggested. Method acting. And the Academy Award for Best Actress goes to Sarah Mitchell for her heart-rending portrayal of a daughter caring for her declining father. They both laughed, the sound making my stomach turn. These strangers wearing familiar faces moved away, and I cracked one eye open just enough to watch them. Sarah had curled up against Derek on the couch, looking like any normal couple relaxing after work. But now, I knew the truth hiding behind their mundane domesticity. "Did you know Thompson's the judge assigned to the competency hearing?" Derek mentioned, casually scrolling through his phone. "Your old roommate, the one from law school." Sarah perked up with interest. "The very same. We stayed in touch over the years. He owes me for keeping quiet about that little cheating scandal during finals. Plus, I've been sending his wife some nice gifts. She's got expensive tastes and a husband on a judge's salary." "So it's guaranteed." "Nothing's guaranteed, but Thompson knows how to play the game. A confused old man versus a concerned family and a respected doctor's evaluation. It'll be a 5-minute hearing." They continued discussing the details of my disposal, like I was already gone, a problem solved. The place in Aurora was called Sunshine Gardens, which sounded pleasant, until Derek mentioned it was where the state sent people with no one left to advocate for them. Understaffed, underfunded, overlooked. People went in, but rarely came out except in a box. After they went to bed, I lay awake processing everything I'd learned. The scope of their betrayal was breathtaking. But what hurt most was how long it had been planned. They'd moved in to help me, but the trap had been set long before. Maybe even before Margaret died. Had they been waiting, watching her decline, calculating how long before they could make their move? The next morning, I shuffled to the kitchen in my robe, playing the part of the confused widower. Sarah barely looked up from her phone as she pushed pills across the table. "Morning, Dad. Here's your medication." I fumbled with the pills, dropping one on the floor. As I bent to retrieve it, I palmed it, instead of swallowing it. "Thank you, sweetheart," I mumbled, adding an extra tremor to my voice. Sarah smiled that false smile. "I'm going out for a few hours. Will you be okay alone?" This was new. They rarely left me unsupervised anymore. I nodded vaguely, already planning my next move. As soon as her car left the driveway, I sprang into action with an energy I hadn't felt in months. First, I needed to know exactly who I was dealing with. Derek's home office was locked, but I still had my old lock-picking skills from a lifetime ago. People didn't know that postal inspectors were federal law enforcement officers trained in investigation and surveillance. They thought we just looked for mail fraud. They were wrong. The lock clicked open after 30 seconds. Derek's office was meticulously organized, which made my search easier. I photographed everything with an old digital camera I'd hidden in the garage, careful not to disturb the placement of any documents. What I found made my blood run cold. File after file of elderly victims, bank statements, property deeds, powers of attorney. Robert Peterson's file was already thick with research. His net worth, his daily routines, his medical history. They'd been studying him, like predators studying prey. In a locked drawer, I found the motherlode. Recordings of phone conversations, copies of forged documents, detailed notes about each victim's vulnerabilities. Derek was thorough. I'd give him that. Thorough and stupid. Never keep evidence of your crimes in your home office. My file was the thickest. Every document I'd signed, every account they'd drained, every step of their plan, laid out in Derek's neat handwriting. But what stopped me cold was a medical report from Dr. Hoffman, dated 2 weeks before Margaret's death. It detailed a plan to introduce heavy metals into my diet, slowly creating symptoms that mimicked dementia. They'd been poisoning me. Just like Margaret had been poisoned by cancer, they were poisoning me with calculated doses designed to steal my mind before they stole everything else. The vitamins and supplements Sarah so carefully administered weren't helping me. They were killing me slowly. I photographed everything, my hands shaking with rage rather than illness. But rage was a luxury I couldn't afford. Not yet. I had work to do. Back in my bedroom, I pulled out an old flip phone I'd hidden inside a box of Margaret's craft supplies. They'd taken my smartphone, claiming it was too complicated for me now. But this simple phone, bought with cash at a gas station, was my lifeline. Harrison. The voice was gruff, older, but unmistakably my former partner. "Ben, it's Landon." A pause. "Landon, Jesus, I heard you were... Well, I heard you weren't doing well." "That's what they want everyone to think." "Ben, I need your help. I've got a case that's going to make our old mail fraud busts look like parking tickets." I gave him the condensed version, speaking quickly, in case Sarah came home early. Ben Harrison had been my partner for 15 years before he moved to the FBI. If anyone would believe me, if anyone could help, it was him. "Send me what you've got," Ben said after a heavy silence. "If even half of what you're saying is true, we're talking major RICO violations. Elder abuse fraud, attempted murder. How many victims?" "At least 12 that I've found evidence for. Maybe more." "Christ. And you're sure about Sarah, your own daughter?" The question I'd been avoiding. Was I sure? Could the little girl who'd made me Father's Day cards with crayon hearts really be capable of this? "I'm sure," I said, the words tasting like ashes. "She's been poisoning me, Ben. My own daughter's been poisoning me." Okay, we'll handle this. Keep playing along, keep yourself safe. I'm going to bring in some people I trust. This is going to take time to do right. The competency hearing is in 6 weeks. Then, we have 6 weeks to build an airtight case. Can you hold out that long? I thought about the pills hidden in my cheek each morning, about the act I had to maintain every waking moment, about the way Sarah looked at me now, like I was already a ghost. "I'll hold out," I promised. "I've got one more thing I need you to check. Judge Thompson, first name Michael. Derek says he's in his pocket." "Judge Thompson. Wait, Michael Thompson. He was on the federal bench 15 years ago. I remember that name." "Why do you remember it?" "Because you testified in his bribery trial. You're the one who caught him taking kickbacks through the mail. He did 5 years in federal prison before getting his law license back." The pieces clicked into place like a combination lock opening. He's the judge for my competency hearing, Ben. Derek's old law school roommate. Ben's cursing was creative and extensive. "This is huge, Landon. Bigger than just elder fraud. If Thompson's dirty again, if he's fixing cases, we're going to need everything you can get. Any chance you can record conversations? I'll figure something out. Be careful. If they suspect you're onto them." He didn't need to finish. If they were willing to poison me slowly, they wouldn't hesitate to arrange an accident if I became a threat. But I was done being a victim. Done pretending to be weak when predators circled my life. After Ben hung up, I carefully returned everything in Derek's office to its exact position and relocked the door. Then, I made one more stop before Sarah came home. Our bedroom closet had a false panel Margaret never knew about installed when we first bought the house. Behind it was my service weapon from my postal inspector days, and something even more valuable, my old recording equipment. Technology had advanced since my time, but the principles were the same. Over the next weeks, I would plant bugs throughout the house. Every conversation, every admission, every piece of their plan would be captured. They wanted to perform for Judge Thompson. I'd make sure their performance was recorded for posterity. Sarah's car pulled into the driveway just as I settled back into Margaret's chair. I slowed my breathing, let my face go slack, became the helpless old man they needed me to be. "Dad." Sarah called, entering the house with grocery bags. "I'm home. Did you take your afternoon pills?" I think so," I mumbled, adding confusion to my voice. "Did I eat lunch?" She sighed, that practiced sigh of the burdened caregiver. "Oh, Dad. Let me fix you something." As she busied herself in the kitchen, probably preparing another dose of poison disguised as care, I stared at Margaret's photo on the mantel. Her warning echoed in my mind, clearer now than ever. "I'm listening now, my love." I whispered too quietly for anyone to hear. "And I promise you, they won't get away with this." The silent wolf had awakened. Now it was time to hunt. The digital recorder was no bigger than a button, which was perfect since I sewed it inside my favorite cardigan. Sarah always insisted I wear it, claiming the house was too cold for just a shirt. She never suspected that her insistence on keeping me bundled up would be part of her downfall. My morning routine had become theater. I'd shuffle to the kitchen where Sarah would have my pills arranged in a neat line, next to a glass of orange juice. The juice was always freshly squeezed. She made a point of doing it in front of me, as if the vitamin C could offset the heavy metals she was feeding me. "Here you go, Dad," she'd say with that practiced smile. "Don't forget the blue one. Dr. Hoffman says it's important for your memory." The blue one was the worst. I'd had Ben's FBI lab analyze the pills I'd been secretly collecting. Lithium mercury compounds and something they couldn't identify but suspected was a designer drug meant to mimic Alzheimer's symptoms. The cocktail was brilliant in its cruelty. Each component legal in isolation, deadly in combination. I'd perfected the art of the fumbled swallow. Pills would scatter. I'd apologize profusely, and, in the confusion, the real medications would disappear into my pocket, while sugar pills I'd prepared went down my throat. Sarah never suspected. Why would she? I was just a confused old man who couldn't even manage his morning routine. "Dad, I found you in the garage again last night," Sarah mentioned one morning, spreading peanut butter on toast with deliberate strokes. "You were talking to Mom's car like she was there." I hadn't been in the garage. This was a new tactic, planting false memories, making me doubt my own experiences. I played along, letting confusion cloud my features. I don't remember. "That's why we're seeing Dr. Hoffman again today," Derek announced, entering the kitchen in his pressed suit. "He wants to do some cognitive tests." The tests were a farce. Dr. Hoffman would ask me to remember sequences of numbers, while Sarah sat nearby, coughing loudly during crucial moments, or tapping her foot in distracting rhythms. When I inevitably failed, he'd shake his head sadly and make notes on his clipboard. "The deterioration is progressing rapidly," he told them after one session, speaking about me, as if I wasn't there. "I'm recommending we move forward with the competency evaluation. The sooner we can get him proper care, the better." What he didn't know was that Ben's team had been investigating him too. Dr. Marcus Hoffman had lost his license in New Jersey for over-prescribing opioids. He'd relocated to Colorado and somehow gotten licensed again, but his practice consisted mainly of elderly patients who coincidentally all ended up in facilities or dead within a year of becoming his patients. I started leaving the house for my confused wanderings, but each trip had a purpose. The library computer lab became my communication center. Email drafts that were never sent served as message boards between Ben and me. I'd learned that trick from a fraud case years ago. If you never send the email, there's no transmission to trace. "We've got Peterson under surveillance," Ben's latest draft read. "Derek's been approaching him at the senior center offering free legal advice. We're going to let it play out, catch him in the act." My response was simple. Check Thompson's finances. Recent deposits. The investigation revealed what I suspected. Judge Michael Thompson, who'd rebuilt his career after federal prison, had received structured payments just below reporting requirements. The money traced back to a shell company that Derek controlled. But the real smoking gun was Thompson's wife's new Lexus, paid for in cash by a grateful client, whose case Thompson had decided favorably. That client was Derek's law partner. 3 weeks before the hearing, I made my boldest move. Sarah and Derek went out for their weekly date night, dinner at an expensive restaurant paid for with my money. I had 4 hours to work. First, I installed cameras. Tiny wireless things that Ben had provided hidden in smoke detectors and air vents. They connected to a secure server that uploaded everything to the FBI in real time. Then, I searched their bedroom. Sarah's jewelry box, which supposedly contained Margaret's pieces for safekeeping, was full of new items. Receipts showed purchases made while Margaret was dying, while I was grieving, while they were supposedly caring for me. But it was Derek's briefcase that held the real treasures. More files on victims, but these were the completed cases. Elderly men and women who died in facilities or accidents after their assets were transferred. One name stopped me, cold Patricia Hoffman. She died 6 months ago, leaving everything to her beloved nephew, Dr. Marcus Hoffman. The same doctor now declaring me incompetent. I photographed everything, my hands steady, despite the rage building in my chest. 12 victims became 20, then 25. How many families had grieved while these vultures counted their stolen money? In the back of a filing cabinet, I found correspondence between Derek and other lawyers, running similar schemes in different states. It was a network, a carefully orchestrated system for identifying, isolating, and robbing the elderly. They shared tactics, recommended compliant doctors, even had a list of judges who could be influenced. My camera battery died just as I heard their car in the driveway. I scrambled to put everything back, my heart hammering, as I heard Sarah's key in the lock. By the time they entered, I was dozing in front of the television, drool carefully placed on my chin for effect. "Look at him," Sarah said, not bothering to lower her voice. "He's pathetic." "2 more weeks," Derek reminded her. "Then we're free." That night, I lay awake, planning. The FBI had enough to arrest them all, but Ben wanted to wait until after the hearing. "We need Thompson to actually take the bribe, actually rule in Derek's favor," he explained. "Otherwise, he'll claim it was legitimate legal representation." But playing victim was taking its toll. Without the poisoned medications, my mind was clear, but maintaining the active decline exhausted me. Worse were the moments when Sarah showed flashes of the daughter I remembered. She'd laugh at something on TV, and for a second, I'd see my little girl. Then the mask would slip back into place, and the stranger would return. 1 week before the hearing, everything almost fell apart. I was in the kitchen when I heard Derek on the phone in his office. He was angry, nearly shouting. "I don't care what Peterson says. We move forward." "No, the old man's son doesn't visit. I checked. Trust me, after next week we'll have the legal authority to—" I leaned closer to the door, forgetting that I was supposed to be shuffling and confused. My elbow knocked a picture frame off the hall table. It shattered on the floor, the sound impossibly loud. Derek's door flew open. He stood there, phone still in hand, staring at me. For a moment, neither of us moved. "Landon." His voice was suspicious. "What are you doing?" My mind raced. I couldn't fumble this. Slowly, I let confusion wash over my features. I looked at the broken frame, then at my hands as if surprised to find them empty. I was looking for Margaret," I said, letting tears fill my eyes. "She said she'd be in the sewing room, but I can't find the sewing room." I looked around helplessly. "Where's Margaret?" Derek's suspicion melted into familiar contempt. "She's gone, remember? Come on, let's get you back to your chair." He guided me away, but not before I heard him tell whoever was on the phone, "False alarm. The old fool's looking for his dead wife again." That night, Sarah doubled my medications. I palmed them all, but the close call had rattled everyone. Derek started working from home more often, watching me with sharp eyes. Sarah rarely left me alone. They were nervous, sensing something without knowing what. 3 days before the hearing, Ben called a meeting. I snuck out during my afternoon confusion, where I often ended up at the park feeding ducks that weren't there. But instead of the park, I met Ben and his team at a safe house 2 blocks away. "We've got them," Ben said, spreading files across the table. "Derek, Sarah, Hoffman, Thompson, and 6 others in the network. When Thompson rules you incompetent, we'll have conspiracy charges on top of everything else." "What about the other victims?" I asked. "Once we arrest the main players, we'll start contacting families. Some of these people might still be alive in facilities. Others—" He shook his head. "We'll get justice for all of them, Landon. I promise." Assistant U.S. Attorney Janet Morrison, a sharp woman with steel-gray hair, leaned forward. "Mr. Landon, I need to be clear about what happens next. When we move in that courtroom, your daughter will be arrested. Are you prepared for that?" I thought about Sarah laughing as she called me pathetic. I thought about the poison disguised as medicine. I thought about Margaret's final warning, and all the victims who hadn't had someone to listen. "I'm prepared," I said firmly. She stopped being my daughter the moment she started poisoning me. We went over the plan one more time. I would attend the hearing, play my part, let them think they'd won. Federal agents would be positioned throughout the courthouse. The moment Thompson ruled in Derek's favor, the arrests would begin. "There's one more thing," I said as the meeting concluded. I want to wear my postal inspector badge. When they realize who I really am, I want them to see it." Ben grinned. "Still have it. In my closet safe. Along with my service weapon, which I won't be bringing." I added quickly, as Morrison's eyebrows rose. "But the badge. That's who I am. Who I've always been, even when they thought I was just a confused old man." The drive back was surreal. Soon, I would stop pretending. Soon, the wolf would shed its sheep's clothing. But first, I had one more performance to give. That evening, Sarah made pot roast. The irony wasn't lost on me. Margaret's recipe, the same meal she'd served when we first met Derek. She chattered about the hearing, about how it was all for my own good, how much better I'd be with professional care. "We'll visit all the time," she lied smoothly, passing me the green beans. "Sunshine Gardens is beautiful. You'll make friends." I nodded vaguely, chewing slowly, like each bite required concentration. Inside, I counted down the hours. 72 hours until the hearing. 72 hours until the truth exploded into their carefully constructed world. Derek raised his wineglass in a mock toast. "To family taking care of family." I lifted my water glass with a trembling hand, playing the part one more time. "To family." I agreed, meeting his eyes. He had no idea how much those words would cost him. The wolf was ready. The hunt would soon begin. 2 days before the hearing, I woke to find my bedroom door locked from the outside. The doorknob rattled uselessly in my hand, as Sarah's voice drifted through the wood. "It's for your own safety, Dad. You were wandering again last night. Derek found you trying to leave the house at 3 in the morning." Another lie to add to their collection. I'd been sleeping soundly, the hidden camera in my room confirming I hadn't moved all night. But I played along, adding confusion and fear to my voice. "Sarah, why can't I open the door? I need to use the bathroom." The lock clicked, and she appeared with that concerned daughter mask firmly in place. "See, I'm right here. We just can't have you hurting yourself before the hearing. Dr. Hoffman says sundowner syndrome is getting worse." Sundowner syndrome. Confusion that increases in the evening. Except I didn't have it. The only syndrome in this house was greed, and it had infected my daughter like a disease. That morning brought a new development. Derek had hired a private nurse to monitor me. Nurse Ratched. I called her in my mind, though her actual name was Brenda Carver. She was a large woman with cold eyes who smelled like menthol cigarettes and disappointment. "Mr. Landon needs constant supervision," Derek explained to her while I sat in my chair staring vacantly at nothing. "He's been increasingly aggressive. Yesterday, he threw a glass at Sarah." I hadn't thrown anything. The broken glass had been Sarah's doing, staged for the security camera they didn't know was uploading to the FBI. Every lie, every fabrication, all captured in high definition. Nurse Carver's supervision was suffocating. She followed me everywhere, even standing outside the bathroom door. Her reports to Derek were detailed fabrications of behaviors I'd never exhibited. According to her notes, I'd tried to eat soap, forgotten how to use utensils, and had long conversations with people who weren't there. But her presence created an unexpected opportunity. She was lazier than she was observant. After lunch, she'd settle into the couch with her romance novels and doze off within minutes. Her snores covered the sound of my phone calls to Ben. "They're escalating," I whispered into the burner phone. "The nurse is creating false documentation." "Perfect," Ben replied. "More evidence of conspiracy. We've got agents in place. Thompson's under surveillance. He met with Derek yesterday at a coffee shop. We've got photos of money changing hands." How much did my son-in-law pay to steal my life? $50,000, cash. Thompson's got gambling debts. $50,000 to destroy a man who'd sent him to prison once before. Some people never learned. That evening, Sarah and Derek's confidence was palpable. They opened a bottle of champagne with dinner, toasting their future, while I pushed food around my plate under Nurse Carver's watchful eye. "I've already got contractors lined up for the house," Derek mentioned casually. "Strip it down, modernize everything. We could flip it for double what it's worth." Or we could rent it out, Sarah suggested. Passive income while we travel. I've always wanted to see Paris. They were spending my money in their minds, planning a life built on the ruins of mine. Nurse Carver excused herself for a cigarette break, and Derek leaned forward. You know, Landon, in a way you should be grateful. We're ensuring your legacy continues. Your money will do more good with us than sitting in accounts you can't even remember exist. I let my hand shake as I reached for my water glass, spilling a little on the table. Sarah sighed and wiped it up like I was a toddler who'd made a mess. The next morning, the day before the hearing, chaos erupted in Derek's perfect plan. He burst into the kitchen where Sarah was preparing my poisoned breakfast cocktail, his face flushed with panic. The FBI raided Peterson's house. They arrested someone named Marcus Chen, who was pretending to be a home health aide. The news says it's part of a major elder fraud investigation. Sarah's hand froze over my pill container. Marcus was working the Peterson case. Was. Now he's in federal custody. Derek ran his fingers through his usually perfect hair. We need to accelerate everything. If they're on to Marcus. They don't know about us, Sarah insisted. We've been careful. Tomorrow Dad gets declared incompetent, and we're in the clear. Stick to the plan. But I could see the cracks forming. Derek made hushed phone calls all morning. Sarah jumped at every car that passed. Even Nurse Carver seemed nervous, checking her phone constantly. That afternoon, while my watchers were distracted by their panic, I made my final preparations. The postal inspector badge was polished and ready, hidden in my jacket pocket. Ben had confirmed all agents were in position. The trap was set, baited with the cheese of their own greed. Dr. Hoffman arrived for a final evaluation, his hands shaking slightly as he performed perfunctory tests. How are we feeling today, Mr. Landon? Purple, I replied, giving him the confused smile he expected. The birds are very purple today. He nodded sagely, making notes. Classic dissociation. I'll have my final report ready for court tomorrow. After he left, I heard him in the hallway with Derek. Whatever's happening with the Peterson situation, it has nothing to do with us. My evaluation is legitimate. Mr. Landon is clearly incompetent. Just make sure Thompson gets your report tonight, Derek said. I want everything airtight. That evening, they ordered pizza, too nervous to cook. Sarah barely ate, pushing pepperoni around her plate while scrolling through news sites on her phone. Derek paced the living room, making call after call to associates who weren't answering. Maybe we should postpone, Sarah suggested finally. Just until things calm down. No, Derek's voice was sharp. Any delay looks suspicious. Tomorrow we finish this. Nurse Carver left at 8, promising to return in the morning to help transport me to court. Make sure he gets his evening meds, she instructed Sarah. We need him docile for the hearing. After she left, Sarah approached with the pills and a glass of water. Her hands trembled slightly as she held them out. For just a moment, her mask slipped, and I saw something that might have been doubt or even regret. Dad, she started, then stopped. Just take your pills. I took them, palmed them, and shuffled off to bed as expected. But sleep was impossible. Tomorrow would bring either justice or disaster. If something went wrong, if Thompson ruled before the FBI could act, I might disappear into Sunshine Gardens forever. At midnight, I crept to my window and looked out at the street. A plumbing van had been parked there for 2 days. FBI surveillance. A jogger passed by at 1 a.m, running the same route for the 4th time. Another agent. They were ready. I just had to play my part one more time. Dawn came slowly, gray and drizzling. Fitting weather for a funeral, I thought. Because today, something would die. Either the elaborate fraud Derek and Sarah had built, or the last chance I had at justice. Sarah knocked on my door at 7. Dad, time to get ready. It's a big day. I sat up slowly, adding confusion to my voice. Ready for what? We're going to see the judge. Remember to make sure you get the help you need. Help. That's what they called theft and attempted murder now. She'd laid out clothes for me like I was a child. A rumpled suit, that made me look even more pathetic than usual. Perfect for their narrative of the incompetent old man who needed saving. What she didn't know was that I'd hidden my badge inside the jacket pocket, along with something else. A photo of Margaret and me on our wedding day. If things went wrong, I wanted her with me. Breakfast was silent, except for Nurse Carver's arrival and her cheerful commentary about the weather. Derek reviewed papers at the table, occasionally glancing at me with satisfaction. All their ducks were in a row. The plan was perfect. "Transportation's here," Nurse Carver announced as a medical van pulled into our driveway. "Let's get Mr. Landon loaded up." They treated me like cargo Derek, and the driver supporting my arms as I shuffled to the van. Sarah followed with a folder of medical documentation, her heels clicking on the wet pavement. None of them noticed the plumbing van pulling out behind us or the sedan that appeared at the next intersection. "You're doing great, Dad," Sarah said, patting my hand as we drove. "This is all for the best. You'll see." I stared out the window at the Denver streets passing by, possibly seeing them clearly for the last time. Either I'd leave that courthouse vindicated, or I'd leave in custody of people who wanted me dead. There was no middle ground left. The courthouse loomed ahead, all concrete, and justice carved in stone. Somewhere inside, Judge Thompson waited to rubber stamp my destruction. But also waiting were federal agents, hidden like wolves among the sheep. "Here we go," Derek said as we pulled up to the entrance. He was smiling now, confident again. The finish line was in sight. I let them help me from the van, leaning heavily on the driver's arm, shuffling like the broken old man they needed me to be. But inside my jacket, my fingers found the badge, its metal, warm from my body heat. Just a little longer, I told myself. Just one more performance. Then the real show would begin. The courthouse hallway stretched before us like a gauntlet. Derek walked with the confident stride of a man about to collect his winnings, while Sarah clutched her folder of fabricated evidence. Nurse Carver held my elbow, guiding me, like I might wander into traffic without her vigilant care. "Courtroom 12, Derek announced, checking his phone. "Thompson's already there." The name sent ice through my veins, but I maintained my vacant stare. After 15 years, I was about to face the man I'd sent to federal prison. Did he know who was coming? Had Derek told him the name of the incompetent old man he'd be ruling against? We passed through security, my badge hidden deep enough to avoid the metal detectors. I'd sewn it into the lining with Margaret's old needle, and thread each stitch a promise that justice would find its way. The courtroom was smaller than I remembered from Thompson's bribery trial. More intimate, which would make the coming explosion all the more spectacular. I recognized faces immediately. Agent Harrison near the back, dressed like a concerned citizen. Janet Morrison from the U.S. Attorney's Office, supposedly there for an unrelated matter. They were all in place waiting. "Dad, sit here." Sarah guided me to a chair at the defendant's table. That's what I was in their story. A defendant against my own competency, fighting a battle they'd already rigged. Judge Michael Thompson entered from his chambers, and time seemed to slow. He was heavier now, his hair gone gray, but those calculating eyes remained the same. He settled behind the bench with practiced authority, shuffling papers without looking up. Case number 2024, CV 3847. In the matter of Landon Walker's competency, the bailiff announced. That's when Thompson glanced up and our eyes met. The blood drained from his face so fast I thought he might faint. His hand reaching for his gavel trembled visibly. The wedding photo in my pocket seemed to burn against my chest. The photo taken by then-prosecutor Michael Thompson's own father at a department picnic back when we'd both believed in simple justice. "My God," Thompson whispered, his voice carrying in the quiet courtroom. "Is that really him?" Every head turned toward me. Sarah's cruel laughter bubbled up, the sound echoing off the walls. "See, he's even got the judge confused. My father's condition affects everyone around him." Derek looked away from my gaze, suddenly fascinated by his paperwork. But I saw his jaw clench, saw the moment he realized something was very wrong. "Your Honor." Derek stood, trying to recapture control. Perhaps we should proceed with the medical testimony. Dr. Marcus Hoffman is here to present his evaluation. Thompson hadn't moved still, staring at me like I was a ghost. Which, in a way, I was. A ghost from his past, come to haunt his present. Judge Thompson, Derek prompted. The medical testimony. The judge shook himself, tried to gather his composure. Yes. Yes, of course. Dr. Hoffman, please take the stand. Hoffman walked forward with the confidence of a man who'd testified in dozens of similar hearings. He didn't know that FBI agents had executed a search warrant on his office at dawn, or that 3 of his former patients had miraculously recovered from their dementia once removed from his care. Dr. Hoffman. Derek began, please describe Mr. Landon's condition. Hoffman launched into his prepared lies. Severe cognitive decline, sundowner syndrome, aggressive tendencies, inability to manage affairs. Each word was another nail in the coffin they'd built for me. Sarah nodded along, occasionally dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. In my professional opinion, Hoffman concluded, Mr. Landon requires immediate placement in a secure facility for his own safety and the safety of others. Thank you, Doctor. Derek turned to Thompson. Your Honor, we also have video evidence of Mr. Landon's deteriorating condition, as well as testimony from his home nurse. The videos played on a screen. Selectively edited footage, showing me stumbling confused, talking to empty chairs. They didn't show Sarah tripping me, or that the empty chair contained Margaret's photo I'd been addressing. Context was everything, and they'd stripped it all away. Nurse Carver testified next, reading from her fabricated notes with clinical detachment. According to her, I was violent, delusional, and deteriorating rapidly. She recommended immediate intervention. This is heartbreaking for our family, Sarah said when called to speak. She'd perfected the Grieving Daughter Act. We just want what's best for Dad. He's not the man who raised me anymore. That, at least, was true. The man who raised her would never have believed her capable of such betrayal. Derek presented financial records next, showing confused transactions bills left unpaid, accounts in disarray. All they're doing, but packaged, to look like dementia's chaos. Your Honor. Derek concluded, the evidence is overwhelming. Mr. Landon needs professional care, and my wife needs the legal authority to ensure he receives it. We're asking for an immediate ruling. Thompson finally found his voice, though it cracked slightly. This is a serious matter. Mr. Mitchell, you're requesting full conservatorship. Yes, Your Honor, with placement authority for appropriate care facilities. Thompson's eyes flicked to me again, then away. Mr. Landon, do you understand what's happening here? This was it. The moment of truth. I could reveal everything, now drop the act and fight. But Ben had been clear. We needed Thompson to complete the crime to actually rule in Derek's favor, despite knowing the truth. So I gave Thompson what he expected. Purple birds, I mumbled, looking around confused. Margaret said there would be purple birds. Sarah's laughter rang out again, sharp and cruel. Derek smiled. Even Nurse Carver looked satisfied. Only Thompson seemed to struggle, beads of sweat forming on his forehead, despite the cool courtroom. I've reviewed the medical evidence, Thompson said slowly, each word seeming to cost him. The testimony appears credible. He was stalling. Behind me, I sensed movement. Federal agents shifting position, ready to spring the moment Thompson's gavel fell. However, Thompson continued, and Derek's smile faltered. Given the serious nature of conservatorship, I feel I should review all evidence thoroughly. Perhaps a brief recess? Your Honor, Derek interrupted, desperation creeping into his voice. With all due respect, the evidence is clear. My father-in-law is incompetent. You have the medical testimony, the video evidence, the financial records. What more could you need? Thompson's hand hovered over his gavel. One swing, and he'd seal all our fates. His eyes met mine one more time, and I let him see it. Just for a second. Not confusion, Not dementia, but the cold clarity of a federal agent who'd caught him once before. "Mr. Landon," Thompson said suddenly, "is there anything you'd like to say before I rule?" Derek objected immediately. "Your Honor, he's not competent to address the court. His testimony would be meaningless." But Thompson had given me an opening, and I took it. Slowly, I stood my hand sliding into my jacket pocket. Sarah and Derek exchanged worried glances. "Purple birds." I started, and Sarah laughed again. But then my voice grew stronger, clearer. "That's what my wife said she saw near the end. Purple birds outside her window. Except they weren't birds. They were the bruises on her arms from the IV lines, purple against her pale skin. She was dying, but she was lucid enough to warn me." The laughter died in Sarah's throat. Derek half rose from his chair. She heard them talking. I continued my voice, gaining strength with each word. My daughter and her husband planning how to steal everything while I grieved. She tried to tell me, but I didn't listen. I thought it was the cancer talking. "Dad." Sarah's voice was sharp now, no longer playing the concerned daughter. "You're confused. Sit down." But I was done being silent. "The only thing I'm confused about is how the daughter I raised could poison her own father for money." The courtroom erupted. Derek shouted objections. Sarah screamed that I was delusional. Nurse Carver tried to physically push me back into my seat, but I pulled out my badge, letting it catch the light. "My name is Landon Walker, and I'm a retired federal postal inspector. For the past 6 months, I've been documenting a conspiracy to defraud not just me, but dozens of elderly victims across multiple states." Thompson's gavel fell, but not to rule on my competency. Order in the court. "And you, Your Honor." I turned to Thompson, whose face had gone from pale to gray. "You remember me, don't you? 15 years ago, I testified at your bribery trial. You did 5 years in federal prison because I caught you taking kickbacks through the mail. And now here you are, taking $50,000 to declare me incompetent." "That's a lie," Derek shouted, but FBI agents were already moving. "Federal agents, nobody move." Ben Harrison's voice boomed across the courtroom. Agents seemed to materialize from everywhere. The gallery, the jury box, even from behind the judge's bench. Derek tried to run, but agents blocked every exit. Sarah sat frozen, her mouth open in shock, as an agent approached with handcuffs. Dr. Hoffman attempted to slide toward the door, but found Agent Morrison blocking his path. "Derek Mitchell, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit elder fraud, attempted murder, and violation of the RICO Act," Ben announced, cuffing Derek's hands behind his back. "This is insane." Derek struggled against the restraints. "He's senile. Can't you see he's delusional?" "The only delusion here," I said, pulling out the recording device, "is thinking you could poison me while I documented every crime." I hit play, and Derek's own voice filled the courtroom. "Once he's declared incompetent, we can ship him off to that place in Aurora." Sarah had gone pale as her own voice followed. "His heart rate's too high for someone sleeping. Even if he heard something, who'd believe him?" "Sarah Walker Mitchell," another agent said, approaching my daughter. "You're under arrest for attempted murder, elder abuse, and conspiracy to commit fraud." "Daddy," she whispered, and for the first time in months, it sounded genuine. "Daddy, Don't," I cut her off. "You laughed while planning my death. You poisoned me every morning with a smile. Save your tears for someone who didn't watch you practice them in the mirror." Thompson hadn't moved from the bench, frozen as agents approached him too. "Your Honor," Morrison addressed him formally, "you're under arrest for accepting bribes, conspiracy to violate civil rights, and corruption of judicial proceedings." I was just..." Thompson's voice died as they cuffed him. "Dr. Hoffman." Ben turned to the trembling physician. "We have a special interest in you. 23 of your elderly patients died under suspicious circumstances. You're under arrest for murder, attempted murder, and fraudulent medical practice. "I want a lawyer," Hoffman squeaked. "You'll need one," Ben replied. "We found your Aunt Patricia's real will, the one before you convinced her to change it. We also found the heavy metals in your medical bag." Nurse Carver tried to blend into the wall, but agents surrounded her too. Brenda Carver, conspiracy to commit fraud, falsifying medical records, elder abuse. As they led the conspirators away, the courtroom filled with victims' families Ben had contacted. Mr. Peterson was there, alive and angry. 3 children of Hoffman's deceased patients. 2 elderly women Derek had been grooming as future targets. Landon. Ben approached as the chaos settled. "You did it. You got them all." I sank into my chair, suddenly exhausted. 6 months of pretending of being poisoned, of watching my daughter transform into a monster. It all crashed over me at once. "Not all," I said quietly. "The network Derek mentioned. There are more of them out there." "We'll get them," Morrison assured me. "With the evidence you gathered, we're looking at a nationwide investigation. You've saved hundreds of potential victims." I looked at the defense table where Sarah had sat now, empty except for her folder of lies. I couldn't save her, though. My own daughter. "She made her choice," Ben said gently. "You gave her every chance to stop. She chose greed over family." The courtroom slowly emptied as statements were taken and evidence collected. I remained seated, my badge heavy in my hand. This thing that had defined me for 30 years had saved me when I needed it most. But the victory felt hollow. "Sir." A young woman approached tentatively. "I'm Jennifer Hoffman. Patricia was my grandmother." I looked up at her tear-stained face. "I'm sorry for your loss." "No, Thank you. We knew something was wrong, but we couldn't prove it. You gave her justice. You gave all of them justice." Others approached with similar stories. Sons and daughters who'd suspected but couldn't prove. Siblings who'd been pushed away by manipulative caretakers. Each thank you eased the hollow feeling slightly. As I finally stood to leave, Agent Morrison stopped me. "Mr. Walker, we'll need you to testify at the trials. All of them. Are you up for that?" I thought about facing Sarah across another courtroom, watching her get sentenced for trying to kill me. It would be agony. But then, I thought about Margaret's warning about all the victims who hadn't lived to see justice, about the elderly people still in danger from predators like Derek. "I'll testify," I promised, "at every single trial." Walking out of that courtroom, I passed the chair where I'd sat, playing the fool. For 6 months, I'd been the confused old man they needed me to be. But underneath, the postal inspector had never left. He'd just been waiting for the right moment to deliver justice. And like the mail service motto says, neither snow, nor rain, nor heat, nor gloom of night, nor even a daughter's betrayal, stays these couriers from the swift completion of their appointed rounds. Justice had been delivered, signed, sealed, and now finally delivered. The federal courthouse in downtown Denver became my second home over the following year. 27 trials, each one, peeling back another layer of the network Derek had helped build. I testified at every single one, my postal inspector badge displayed on the witness stand, a reminder that even retired, we never stop serving justice. Derek's trial came first. He strutted into court in an expensive suit his lawyer had fought to let him wear, instead of prison orange, still believing he could talk his way out of consequences. That confidence evaporated as I took the stand and methodically presented evidence of 32 elderly victims across 5 states. "Mr. Walker." Derek's attorney tried to shake me during cross-examination. "Isn't it true you suffered from confusion during this period? How can we trust your recollection?" I pulled out a storage drive from my pocket. "Because I recorded everything. 800 hours of audio, 3,000 photographs, every forged document, every stolen dollar, every single crime." The prosecutor played excerpts. Derek's voice planning my disposal, his laughter while describing previous victims, his detailed instructions to other lawyers on selecting targets widowed, isolated with substantial assets, and trusting natures. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. Guilty on all counts. As they led Derek away to begin his 25-year sentence, he turned to me with pure hatred. "You destroyed everything." "No," I replied calmly. "You destroyed yourself the moment you decided my life was worth less than my bank account." Dr. Hoffman's trial revealed the true scope of his crimes. 23 elderly patients dead under suspicious circumstances, all having changed their wills shortly before deaths, attributed to sudden illness. The heavy metals found in my system matched those in exhumed bodies. He got life without parole and lost his medical license in every state. Judge Thompson faced the lightest sentence, 10 years and permanent disbarment. During his allocution, he broke down crying. "I'm sorry, Landon. When I saw you in that courtroom, I knew what I'd become. I just couldn't stop myself." "You could have," I told him after the verdict. "You just chose not to." Sarah's trial was the hardest. She entered the courtroom thin and pale after months in custody, her designer clothes replaced by a simple suit from the public defender's office. When our eyes met, I saw a flicker of the daughter I'd raised before the stranger reasserted herself. The evidence against her was overwhelming. The poisoning documented in medical tests, her voice on recordings discussing my murder, the forged documents with her signature. But what sealed her fate was a video from our home security system. Sarah carefully measuring mercury drops into my morning orange juice, while humming the same lullaby I'd sung to her as a baby. "I was manipulated," she claimed on the stand. "Derek convinced me Dad was really sick. I thought I was helping." But the prosecutor presented text messages between Sarah and her college roommate from 2 years before Derek proposed. "When Mom dies," Sarah had written, "Dad won't last 6 months. Then it's all mine." The premeditation was clear. She'd been planning this before Derek even entered the picture. He'd just provided the method. 15 years. That's what my daughter got for trying to kill me. As the judge read the sentence, Sarah finally broke down in genuine tears. "Daddy, please, I'm sorry I was sick. I was wrong. Please don't let them take me. I wanted to feel something. Sympathy, forgiveness, even anger. But all I felt was tired. You made your choice, Sarah. Now live with it." The trials revealed a network spanning 12 states. Lawyers, doctors, nurses, financial advisors, and even some judges had built a systematic approach to robbing the elderly. The FBI called it Operation Silver Shield, and by the time it concluded, over 200 people were in custody. But trials weren't the only consequence. Lawsuits flew as families of victims sought compensation. Derek and Sarah's assets were seized under forfeiture laws. The house, my house, was returned to me, along with everything they'd stolen. It felt strange walking through rooms where I'd been prisoner and predators' prey, but it was home. Margaret's home. 6 months after Sarah's sentencing, she sent a letter from federal prison. I almost threw it away unopened, but curiosity won. "Dear Dad," she wrote in handwriting that hadn't changed since middle school. "I know you hate me. I hate myself. Every night I lie here thinking about Mom warning you. She knew what I'd become before I did. I'm in therapy now. Real therapy, not the manipulation Derek taught me. I'm starting to understand how sick I was. How sick I still am. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know I'm trying to find the daughter you raised. She's buried deep, but maybe she's not completely gone. Sarah." I read it 3 times before filing it away. Maybe someday I'd be ready to respond. Maybe not. A year after that first letter, I was tending Margaret's grave when someone cleared their throat behind me. I turned to find a woman in her 60s, with kind eyes and silver hair pulled back in a ponytail. "Mr. Walker, I'm Helen Morrison. I was Margaret's friend from her book club." I remembered her now. She'd brought casseroles after the funeral had tried to visit before Sarah banned everyone. "Helen, it's good to see you." "I wanted to apologize," she said, twisting her hands together. "When Sarah told us you needed space, I should have pushed harder. Margaret would have wanted me to check on you." "You couldn't have known," I assured her. They fooled everyone, including me. We talked beside Margaret's grave for an hour. Helen shared stories about my wife I'd never heard. Book club adventures, failed craft projects, the time they'd gotten lost, driving to a winery, and ended up at a goat farm instead. I found myself laughing for the first time in 2 years. "Would you like to get coffee sometime?" Helen asked as we prepared to leave. "I'd love to hear more about the investigation. Margaret always said you had the most interesting stories from your postal inspector days." Coffee turned into weekly lunches, then dinners, then long walks through the park. Helen didn't try to replace Margaret. She couldn't and didn't want to. But she brought light back into a life that had gone dark. 2 years after the trials concluded, I stood before a room of FBI trainees, teaching a course on elder fraud detection. Predators choose victims carefully. I explained, clicking through slides of warning signs. They look for isolation, recent loss, cognitive decline, or simple trust. They're often family members or close friends. The betrayal is part of their weapon. A young agent raised her hand. "How do you recover from something like that when your own family tries to kill you?" I thought about it, touching the badge still carried in my pocket. You remember that their sickness doesn't define your worth. You help other victims. You build new connections. And you never ever blame yourself for trusting someone who should have been trustworthy. After class, Ben found me in the hallway. "Good lecture. You've saved a lot of lives with these trainings." "Trying to make Margaret proud," I said simply. "She would be." He paused. "Hey, did you hear Sarah's up for early release? Good behavior completing therapy programs. She needs someone to sponsor her." My chest tightened. And nothing. Just thought you should know. The decision's entirely yours. That night, I sat with Helen on my back porch, watching the sunset paint the sky purple. Purple birds, Margaret had called them. I'd learned to see beauty in purple again. Sarah wrote again. I told Helen, showing her the latest letter. This one included a photo from the prison craft program. A ceramic bird painted purple and white, clearly made with more love than skill. "What does your heart tell you?" Helen asked gently. "That forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. That redemption is possible, but trust has to be earned." I studied the photo. She's my daughter, Helen. The poison didn't kill that fact, even if it killed everything else. "So what will you do?" I made the decision that had been building for months. I'll sponsor her release, with conditions. Heavy monitoring, continued therapy, gradual contact. She'll never have access to my finances or health decisions. But maybe we can build something new. Not what we had, but something honest. Helen squeezed my hand. "You're a good man, Landon Walker." "I'm trying to be." The sponsorship hearing took place on a rainy Thursday, almost exactly 5 years after Margaret's death. Sarah appeared on video link from prison, looking healthier than she had in years. When she saw me in the hearing room, her composure cracked. "Dad, you came—" "I'm sponsoring your release," I said formally. "Under strict conditions. You violate any of them, you go back. No second chances." "I understand. Thank you. I know I don't deserve—" "No," I interrupted. "You don't. But maybe you can earn it." The board approved her release. 6 weeks later, I waited outside the prison gates as Sarah walked out in civilian clothes, carrying her possessions in a clear plastic bag. She stopped 10 feet away, uncertain. "Hi, Dad." "Sarah." We stood there awkwardly until she laughed. Not the cruel sound from the courtroom, but something almost like the girl I'd raised. "I don't know how to do this." "Neither do I. But your mother believed in second chances, so we'll figure it out." I didn't hug her. Didn't invite her home. Trust would take years to rebuild, if ever. But I drove her to the halfway house where she'd live, helped carry her bags to the door, and promised to visit the following week. As I drove home to Helen and the life I'd rebuilt from ashes, I thought about the lessons learned through pain. Sometimes the greatest strength isn't in fighting back. It's in knowing when to appear weak. Sometimes justice comes not from revenge, but from revealing truth. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is choose hope over hate, even when hate would be easier. My name is Landon Walker. I was a postal inspector for 30 years, a husband for 35, a father for 33. I've been a victim, an investigator, a teacher, and now perhaps a man learning to forgive. The poison my daughter fed me didn't kill my body, and I've chosen not to let it kill my soul. Margaret warned me with her dying breath, and though it took time, I finally listened. Now I help others hear the warnings before it's too late. Because in the end, that's what we owe each other: the truth, the justice, and the chance to make things right. Even if that chance comes from behind prison walls. Even if that justice comes disguised as weakness. Even if that truth breaks your heart before it sets you free. The wolves are still out there hunting the vulnerable. But now, I teach others to recognize their howl. And sometimes late at night, when the moon is full, I remember that I was once a wolf too. Just one who hunted for justice instead of greed. That's the difference between predator and protector. Both have teeth. It's how you choose to use them that defines who you are. If you've experienced elder abuse or suspect someone you love is being exploited, please don't wait for a dramatic revelation. Contact the National Elder Fraud Hotline at 833-FRAUD-11. Like Landon's story shows, the warning signs are often hidden behind familiar faces and trusted relationships. Have you or someone you know faced a similar betrayal from someone you trusted? How did you find the strength to fight back or forgive? Share your story in the comments below. Your experience might be the warning someone else needs to hear. If this story moved you, please consider subscribing to hear more tales of justice and redemption. Hit the like button to help others discover these important stories, and share this video with anyone who might need to hear that they're not alone in their struggle. Thank you for listening to Landon's journey. Remember, your worth isn't determined by those who try to exploit you, but by the strength you find to stand up for yourself and others. Stay strong, stay aware, and most importantly, stay true to the person you choose to be. Until next time, this is your reminder that justice may be delayed, but it doesn't have to be denied. Sometimes, it just needs the right person to deliver it.